All right, so today we're going to be talking about the full release of Rift. And if you haven't checked out my other video on Rift Filter Lite, maybe give that a go just because it'll be relevant. But I am going to try and overview this whole thing in one video here and, just make some sounds, do the whole usual thing. So yeah, let's just get into it, honestly. So what is this thing? Rift is three things, ultimately. Rift is a distortion, a filter, and a delay, and that's it. And obviously, none of those things on their own are very groundbreaking technology. It's all been around. But in each of these modules, there's a bunch of added features that you usually don't get access to, a bunch of groundwork done to make some complex things very easy to do. And it's all around just going to take all of these basic ideas and build on them in a way that I'm honestly not really seeing any other plugin do. And because of that, you can just get a bunch of really interesting, very musical results out of this thing. So yeah, let's just kind of dive into it here. First thing you're always going to want to do when you open Rift is get out of this menu and go into this menu, because this is the plugin. This is actually Rift. This is just like the distortion only and the macros, and then presets. If you want to load them, you can use the macros here, and they have a ton of presets. And honestly, the presets are good. But we want to do our own thing. So we're going to just always load this. And then what are we looking at here? So easiest way to think about this is this whole top part is the distortion. All of this whole top section is just the distortion module, and it has a bunch of features and stuff we'll get into. And then in the corners, you're going to have your delay, which is called feedback. It's just a delay. And then Rift Filter Lite, as is, just thrown right here in this corner. There's really nothing different about it other than that you can change the routing pre or post on the distortion. So there's that, and then the modulation in the middle, and then the macros, obviously. And these are just standard macros. The modulation, actually a little interesting. We got an envelope follower, standard envelope follower. Just going to basically use your input as a modulator, which is interesting. We've got an LFO that is as standard as LFOs come. The one different thing being this randomizer. So every impulse, or I guess basically every time it reaches the end of whatever you have your rate set to, it's going to cycle and create a completely new shape for you. And then you can also like have influence on the type of shape by using this still. Yeah, so that's good if you want randomization. Other than that, just an LFO. And then over here, we've got the curves, and these are just completely drawable envelopes, kind of standard how you'd see in like Serum or whatever. And then if you need the grid and all of that, you can bounce it out and have this whole elaborate editor, which does all sorts of things. Mainly, it just lets you like insert a bunch of pre-made different shapes, I guess. And then you can also change the grid size, do whatever you want here. There's a lot. And then obviously you got just like regular mouse mode where you can just individually edit the points. We can turn off snap and just free transform this. The one standout feature, I mean, these shapes are nice, and like, it's got all of your standard like draw box and delete a bunch of them and move them around and all that. But the way that the curves work is like really weird, honestly. So you can get these very elaborate kind of different shapes out of it by playing with the curve type. And I haven't really been able to find anything that works quite this way except for Portal, because it's also made by Jake. But anyways, so this is a lot of fun. You can sit here and make some pretty interesting shapes with this guy. So that's that. And then all that's left from here is the distortion. And this is where we should start putting some sounds in and get into it. So what do we got up here? This is, they're calling this bipolar distortion. And let's just break that down before anything else, because I think that's probably the only thing that's kind of confusing about this whole plugin is what bipolar distortion means. And it's, in the simplest explanation, it's just doing different wave shapes to the top and bottom half of the wave. So if we turn these knobs here, this is like the amount of wave shape you're applying. So if we turn these all the way up and then choose different shapes, so you'll see we get that. And then let's change this to, I don't know any of these. So now you can see we have two completely unique shapes on the top and bottom. And this is cool because it's going to give us kind of the character of both of these different wave types at the same time, which is interesting. From here, just for posterity's sake, I'm going to do it. I'm going to actually break down what this means, just in case people aren't understanding it, because I think, again, this is like the one point of contingency where understanding what the bipolar in bipolar distortion is pretty important. So I have this hat loaded, which is just a hat. There's nothing amazing about it. But all we're doing is looking at the waveform here. So in this waveform, we're going to go ahead and ignore, it's two channels, left and right. So we can just look at one of them, ignore the other. And you can see this, I know it's really hard to see. You can see this horizontal line that goes all the way through this wave. And that is called the zero crossing. For those of you, if you know what a zero crossing is, just like skip all this because it's going to be irrelevant to you. But a zero crossing essentially is complete silence. You can think of this as where your speaker is at rest when no sound is playing. And then this is an approximation, but you can imagine that what this curve is representing that oscillates between this zero crossing is when it's above the zero crossing, it's like your speaker is pushing out towards you. And when it's below the zero crossing, it's receding back into the speaker, like the casing of the speaker. So all the speaker is doing is oscillating back and forth past its resting point in the center. That resting point is the zero crossing. Good enough. Again, this is an approximation. That's not actually what this is representing. It has to do with pressure over time, or it's more complicated than that. But the long and short of it is that you can now look at each side of this wave separately with Rift, and we can apply distortion to just these oscillations that are moving upwards or just these oscillations that are moving downwards. So this opens up some interesting possibilities. Let's go ahead and just start actually listening to what this thing sounds like. So I'm going to play a saw wave. It's real quiet. Let's give ourselves some volume on this saw wave. And right now nothing's really happening because we have to increase the drive. There we go. Now we can hear it. And then let's play on either side of this. Let's play with these amounts. We can change the modes. It's important to note that some of these are actually dynamic, which is crazy. So again, back to what makes Rift powerful over other things is you have all these pre-built wave shapes, which is nice to have wave shapes, great. But some of these, so let's look at like the jitter. The whole wave is going to move in real time. And there's a bunch that do this. So if we keep scrolling through, I think, Optical does it. Quantize. Actually, Quantize doesn't move. But I think there's one called Damon that moves. Yeah, this one does it. So this is something I've actually never seen in a wave shaper before is dynamic wave types. Like that's pretty sick. So obviously, of course, we can immediately let's choose some of these more dramatic ones. Can just start immediately modulating these. Just like Serum style, you just drag it on and then do this. I believe you can make it, bipolar by right-clicking. We can put this on both sides, maybe put it backwards, so this one's doing something different. I don't really want to hear this noise. Let's do something else that's a little weirder. Let's do the Damon one. And of course, all of this is going to be heavily dependent on your input drive. And they have this 2x button, which is just going to double your input. You got to trim. Just a regular distortion trim. Cool. That's really it for this. Like, you just have a bunch of shapes to choose from. You can apply it to the top and bottom. The last menu we really have to pay attention to is this menu up here. And this is, again, kind of where we have to understand how the plugin works in order for this to make sense. So let me just disable, I guess we can't disable. We have to remove these, which is fine. I'm going to remove these two different modulations so we can just see what's happening here. And you can see we have this dynamic one on the bottom and we have this really complex harmonic one at the top that is static. We have this knob here, or I guess it's a button called stages. And if you click this to the right, you'll see we increase the stage and now it's kind of blended these two waves together. And the more stages you do, the closer it will be to a symmetrical distortion where you just have the same thing on both sides. But this gives you another layer of being able to control what exactly is going on here. And we can get these really interesting movements by combining like a simple dynamic one with a complex one. So let's listen to this. So way different sounds. And it's always good to keep in mind with Rift, like the more you do these kind of like increase the stages or increase the drive and all that, the more complex these waves become, the more they're just going to start to sound like noise. So you got to be a little bit, I guess, just smart about how hard you push all this stuff so that it doesn't reduce the fidelity of it too much. But yeah, that's pretty awesome that you can do all that. I don't really know of any other plugin where you can do that. So from there, we can look at, I guess this is the most confusing part about it, in my opinion, and I still don't understand fully exactly how this works. In fact, let's just pull up our tooltips. This is a good thing to know about. If you just click up here and hover over this, it'll tell you a bit about it. My understanding is that this is going to change the way it's sampling your input. So if you have it to stereo, it's just going to pull your input as is. If you have it to sides, it's going to just listen to the sides, cut the sides, and add the distortion to the sides. I don't know if it sums it back to your original signal when it's doing these different monitoring modes though. So let's see what our tooltip has to say about this. Okay, so wide creates mono-compatible stereo width by inverting the bigger bipolar processing on the right channel. Processes both mid and side signals, processes the mid signal and bypasses the side, and then processes the stereo sides and bypasses the mid. So yeah, it's going to totally get rid of your mono signal if you do that, as far as I understand. But these can be really interesting. Right now it's just a saw wave, so it's not going to really sound like anything. But when you start having more complex sources, the way you interpret the stereo information is going to have very large impact on what the sound is like in the wave shaper. So that's really cool. Last two things are much easier to understand. So then we got hard and smooth. This is basically just going to be, if you think about it, all these waves have to meet back together no matter what in the center. So as these are oscillating, let's go over here. So as this wave is oscillating, it has to reach the midpoint in order to go down somehow. So they have an algorithm that's compensating for the complexity in the center and either allowing you to smoothly transition between the top and bottom like this, which you can't tell at all, this patch. Let me just load a blank one so we can see what's going on a little easier. So we can make like, I don't know, one of these and like just get another really harsh one going on so that we can hopefully see, see this like hard line right here, right around the zero crossing. If we hit smooth, it'll smooth that out and it'll give you a cleaner transition between the top and bottom parts of the wave. So that's pretty easy. Sometimes you want that on hard just because it being fucked up is actually cool. And they're always doing some math to make sure it's not going to DCF offset on you. The other mode is the blend mode. And so this is going to take this red line essentially right now is representing the zero crossing. So it's saying that like you're applying this wave above zero and this wave below zero. If we change this blend, you'll see it moves this whole red line up and down. And that's not actually moving the zero crossing. You can see there's still a zero crossing line. But what this is doing is it's saying instead of having these algorithms stuck either hard on the top or hard on the bottom, you can create a different transition point. And now you can see we're bringing this lower algorithm all the way up to above the zero crossing, and we're only using this other distortion on like the loudest parts of the signal otherwise. So this can just be interesting. If you put it all the way, you can just have regular symmetrical distortion. So if we put it all the way this way, now we're just seeing the harmonic. If we put it all the way the other way, then we're just seeing the daemon. So, again, knowing what all this does is kind of important just so you understand. But at the end of the day, once you have a sound running through here, you can just kind of like whip all these around and see what sounds cool and just lean into it. So that's the technical stuff out of the way. I think past that, we have our feedback. So hold on, let's see what this is sounding like. Let's get our automation back on here. Sure. Now let's listen to our feedback. I'm going to do the filter last just because I already have that other video on it. But the feedback is going to work similarly to the filter in that we have right off the bat, again, remember, it's just a delay, but by default, the delay is tuned to frequencies that are notes. So I don't know why more delays don't do this, but now what we can do is we can input this, get some feedback. And this tone we're adding is always going to be a whole note. And then we can even restrict the note it plays down here, just like with the filter, to be a scale, or we could do like all white notes or whatever we want. So now, if you watch this big readout, we'll see it's only going to get white notes. So that's pretty cool. We can also filter it independently. And then we can send the feedback through the distortion. Great. And then one thing that's also good to know about this one is the feedback. It can get really touchy, especially when it's in the distortion. If we have it up, like it's just gonna never, it's gonna keep doing that forever. So one trick to get the full feedback sound, but then still have it stop when you let go of the note, is just to put the envelope follower all the way up. And then whenever you're playing something, pushes the feedback up, and then when you let go, it stops. Cool. So that's just like a nice resonator sound. Also, we of course can like take the MIDI input if we wanted to by just changing it to MIDI mode and then doing the external instrument. I might do that later. It's in the other tutorial if not. And then we've got just like standard delay. So we've got dot, triplet, normal, sync free. And then we've also got a comb filter. Unfortunately, we can't tune this comb filter, which kind of sucks, but it's there and it's cool. So those are all the things in the delay, as far as I know. There is a ping pong mode, but the ping pong mode is a little botched if you're using the tune mode, because it's always going to pan left. And so, yeah, kind of fuck that. So I usually just keep stereo as that, and then we can spread it a bit, just like with the filter. Cool. So yeah, that's the delay. That's really it. And then it's just important to remember that, like, the beauty of this thing is not that it does things that are impossible, but just that it gives you access to modulating it in ways that nothing else will. So, hold on, I'm gonna drink some tea. For example, if we wanted to draw like a little melody in here, again, we can restrict our notes however we see fit, and then we can just make like as elaborate of an automation as we want in here. So we can go like this, bounce this out, and then I don't know, maybe not quite that big, and we can just kind of make a step sequence of sorts. Cool. So yeah, we'll dive into this a little bit more, but let's take a look at the filter. And again, everything is the same, except now we can pre-route this into the distortion, which is my favorite thing to do with it. And then again, we just have all of the same shit. So I'm not going to really go over it, but we can still tune it. We can still have it in Hertz, MIDI, or tune mode. We can actually lock these together. So I can go over here and hit this little button, and now it'll have the same notes applied to both sides, no matter which side I change it from. So that's tight. But other than that, yeah, you got spread, you got your morph, you got your resonance, and that's it. And again, the beauty here is that we have the access to tuning it, because that can be really crazy. And then B, we can have these really insane morphs. And this just goes back into like, yeah, sure, a filter. There's like a gazillion filters out there, but there aren't really many filters where they've spent this amount of time like making all of these really usable morphs that are still gonna maintain pitch correlation with this tuned algorithm. So, or it's not even an algorithm, it's just literally snapping the tune knob to frequencies that correspond with notes. But anyways, it's not going to fuck up your fundamental when you go through these morphs. You'll see like the fundamental stays on that one, or like even the ones where they move, it ends up being like some interval that actually makes sense against this tuning. So anyways, all that said, now we can rip this through the distortion and kind of get everything working together by adding the modulation to these different elements. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. So let's see what we can get. Yeah, we can like add this green one to here. We can just start throwing this green one on everything under the sun. Again, remember that the drive has a huge effect on the sound overall. One last thing, there's 3 different colors on this. White is just through. See, it'll clip. If we do purple, it's going to hard limit it, but it's going to try to minimize distortion. And then if we have it on red, it's going to soft clip, just like glue compressor or something like that. Sick. And then we can again change the position. Maybe try some different filters. So we'll try putting both of these modulations on this. And then we can try putting this on like the feedback also, so it's less just like on. Okay. So that's all pretty interesting. Keep in mind, our source right now is that. So, as you can imagine, like the source sound is going to have a pretty big impact on what the rest of your sound sounds like. So I'm going to make a couple more here. And now that we have like the whole explanation out of the way, I'm going to, just kind of start from scratch, make some basic sounds in Operator, nothing too crazy, and then start applying Rift to get it, sounding real crazy. All right, so let's just go ahead and load Operator, and we can barely hear that, so we'll get some volume. Gonna add some simple harmonics to the first one. And then some to the second one. Why is this so quiet? Add some detuning. I'm sure you guys have seen me do this a million times, so I'm not going to think too hard about it. If you haven't seen me do this, it's the least scientific thing ever. I'm just drawing random shapes in here and leaving the fundamentals. So that's sounding a little beefier. That sounds like something we could put through Rift. I'm also going to add, just because this is going to be pretty much completely mono still, I'm going to add just like a little bit of reverb, just blend it hard to the composition. Yeah, I'm just kind of... Cool. So now with this, let's go ahead and add a Rift and get out of this fucking menu and then go to the real thing. And then now let's, just kind of go for it. So starting with some shapes and pushing the drive as far as we need to hear it. Try one of these. I really like the Redux one. Kind of sounds like shit. And we'll start with just like a triangle wave as some really basic meandering slow modulation. We'll go to the feedback and distort it. Sounding good, and then now, we'll just add just like, oh god, there's that thing again. Oh, because I had negative feedback. So I'm just trying to add some like harmonic content with this one, and then now we'll make one that goes nuts mode and like rips it through. So go to our real menu, and then yeah, we'll just add some. Let's try some of these. Here we can try like these different modes. It's not going to sound too different, so we'll just leave it. Sometimes it'll sound very different depending on the source you put in. On this one, let's give it the MIDI note. So I'm just going to group it, add an external instrument, and then send this to whatever we're on, which is just instrument 2, Rift, or instrument rock 2 with Rift. Now we have to give this a MIDI input, so I'll turn on MIDI mode on here, and now it should just take the input, and then this is an offset. Oh, it's not the right one. So since I have 2 rifts, this is really important actually. You can only have 1 rift per external instrument. So I have to select the second one here. And if you need both of them active, you can just duplicate it and then make 2 of them. And now both of these are being sent the MIDI, but I only care about this one for now. So now it should There we go. Go back to just, and then now we can start to get intense with this filtering. So again, they're all cool. Just give one of them a go and see what happens. Gotta be pre. try a different one. Let's try, I like some of these. Yeah, like. So that's pretty sick. Let's just add another one here after this OTT. You can see how deep the rabbit hole goes as you can just keep adding them and adding them. Like one that does one of those crazy like so we can add this like melody on in the same way to this one by just having a similar percentage of movement on the knob, and then we can get the same melody kind of going, and then put it on you know, like one of these really stupidly overkill filters like this one. You gotta make sure we're in tune. That's kind of nuts. Okay, so you get the idea. This is what we're putting into. Yeah, you get the idea. Maybe I can do one last patch just for good measure because we're already this far. Might as well just bust out one more and do it a little bit differently this time. I'm sure you definitely have an idea of what's possible at this point. But I'm just gonna make something with a little bit of a different impulse this time and try and see if we can get somewhere a little bit different. Okay, so again, can't even hear this. Just make a little pluck. Cool. Now we're going to just go right into Rift and do the thing to it. Something sounds a bit off. All right, good enough. And we'll just keep this white notes and then yeah, let's do something stupid with this. Let's take our curve and apply it up the scale and then try and actually kind of cool. Let's again try just putting some like subtle reverb before this. And the way the notes snap around like that is something we can tap into with the filter as well. I do wish early on we were trying to figure out a way to have the option between the smooth glide between notes and the quantize, and it's more complicated than it seems on the surface, but ultimately this snappy quantize sound can be interesting for a lot of different movements. So now some stereo from the reverb. Let's just try this here. Again, really no difference. I have had a lot of sounds where this does do a lot. We'll just leave it off for now. Once again, send our MIDI out, and remember we have to do the second riff. So we're going to just grab external instrument, and then we are going to skip our first riff and add it to our second riff. We can add like a seven semitone transpose, which is a fifth. It's sounding not good, so let's try an octave. So now again we can make like another silly little then we can make this something more interesting. Maybe add this to the morph also. Let's try turning the rate down on this one a little bit. Yeah, just regular octave sounds better on that actually. This could be interesting, actually. Let's do the same thing. Okay, and just as a reminder, I'll leave the other effects, but this is what we had before. It's just so insane. I could sit here and play with this thing forever, but I think that should get you guys started. And definitely, if you feel like supporting minimal, this looks interesting to you, go buy that shit. I think it's $75 on their website. And yeah, minimal is awesome. It's just some homies who started a really insanely good looking company. So I'll definitely be working with them more in the future and checking out all the stuff they're putting out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And you guys, I think will be digging the things they're coming up with. So make sure to go support those dudes, all that. And I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.